Black CEO denied first class 25 minutes later. He shut down their entire booking system. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing collectively. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to the story. You can't stand here. This line is for first-class passengers only. The sentence cracked through the terminal like a whip sharp, echoing, slicing the calm hum of the airport's premium wing. A few heads turned first, then a few more, and within seconds, the entire first-class queue shifted in a slow, collective pivot toward the man being spoken to. Nathaniel Cole, tall, composed, leather carry-on slung over one shoulder, stopped mid-step, not because he was confused, but because the hostility in the agent's voice was unmistakable. The fluorescent lights above threw a cold sheen across the polished floors, reflecting a small circle of eyes already judging him before he even opened his mouth. The airline agent stepped forward, chin raised, her lips curling with the kind of politeness sharpened into a weapon. Her name tag gleamed under the harsh lighting. M. Turner. "Sir, the economy check-in area is downstairs," she said, each word dipped in condescension. "This line is reserved for first-class and VIP tier passengers." Nathaniel barely had time to answer before a man in a navy blazer chuckled behind her. "Maybe he got lost," the man whispered loudly to his partner. "Happens." Another voice joined in, probably trying to get an upgrade. A soft wave of laughter rippled a ritual of dismissal performed by people who never imagined they'd be wrong. But the agent wasn't done. She extended a manicured hand, blocking Nathaniel's boarding pass with a stiff, practiced gesture. "Sir, please don't make this uncomfortable. I just need to point you to the correct line so we can keep the premium queue moving." He looked at her, calm, steady in expression without heat or apology. "I am in the correct line," he said quietly. Her eyebrows arched in disbelief. "May I see your boarding pass, then?" He offered it. She took it with 2 fingers, as though touching it might contaminate her. She held it up to the light unnecessarily, then scanned it with an exaggerated slowness meant to send a message. A soft beep confirmed authentication, but she frowned anyway. That's odd. It says first class. Let me double-check." Another beep, another pause, another frown. Deeper, this time performative disbelief. The passengers behind Nathaniel shifted, some amused, some curious. One older woman whispered, "He must have borrowed someone else's ticket." Another chimed in, "They really should tighten their screening. Anyone can print these things nowadays." Phones began to rise, not aggressively, not blatantly, just slowly, like predators stretching before a hunt. Screens angled discreetly, thumbs hovered. The modern Colosseum preparing for spectacle. Nathaniel exhaled softly. He could feel the shift, the familiar turning of the air when a room begins to decide who deserves dignity and who doesn't. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now, back to Nathaniel. The agent tapped her tablet again, her patience thinning into something colder. "I'm sorry, sir, but this can't be right. I'm going to need to see your ID, and your payment card, and possibly the confirmation email. We have protocols." A man further up the line snorted. "Just call security. This is ridiculous." Someone else murmured, Every time there's a delay, it's because someone like him tries this." Nathaniel's jaw tightened, not from embarrassment, not from anger, but from a deeper, quieter recognition. None of this was new. Not the assumptions, not the whispered jokes, not the manufactured suspicion. He reached for his wallet, but Turner stepped back sharply, as if bracing for trouble. "Sir, keep your hands where I can see them. It'll tell you when to present your documents." A ripple cut through the line. A few gasps, a few smirks. The humiliation was no longer subtle, it was choreography. Nathaniel slowly lowered his hand. "You're treating me as if I've done something wrong." Turner offered a thin smile. "We just follow procedures. People try to sneak into first class more often than you'd think." Her voice dropped into a whisper meant to sting. Especially people who, well, never mind. He held her gaze. It was the quiet that unnerved her. Not defiance, not aggression, just certainty. The kind that didn't belong to a man she thought she could dismiss. A boarding announcement echoed faintly overhead, but no one around them moved. The premium lounge windows gleamed in the background, reflecting the tight ring of passengers now watching the scene like a slow-building scandal. Turner shoved the boarding pass back into his hand. "I'm calling my supervisor," she declared. "We need to verify this before you cause more delays." He studied her face for a long second, measured, unblinking before speaking in a tone so soft it almost disappeared under the terminal noise. "You've already caused enough delays." And as she spun away to find her supervisor, she didn't notice the way his fingers brushed the edge of his phone, the smallest motion, the first quiet spark of what would become the most expensive 30 minutes in her career. The humiliation wasn't over. But neither was his silence, and silence, in the hands of a man like Nathaniel Cole, was never empty. The terminal lights hummed overhead, a sterile glow spreading across the premium wing as if the building itself were holding its breath. Nathaniel remained exactly where he stood, center of a widening circle, a still point in a storm of assumptions he never asked for. Turner marched off in clipped, agitated steps, her heels striking the tile like tiny hammers of indignation. Behind Nathaniel, a family in designer travel wear whispered openly, "Why didn't he just use the regular line? First class is expensive, honey. Not everyone can afford it." He probably bought a basic ticket and thought he'd charm his way in. A nervous chuckle followed. Disbelief always made people bold. Nathaniel didn't turn, didn't react, didn't give the performance they wanted. His eyes traced the reflection in the wide glass panels, the rows of sleek lounge chairs, the glow of the first-class emblem, the cluster of onlookers leaning forward as if this were free entertainment. A man in a gray suit just ahead of him shifted closer to his wife. "Honestly, the staff shouldn't have to deal with this. They have enough to handle." His wife nodded with theatrical sympathy. "Must be exhausting." A small child tugged at her sleeve. "Mommy, why can't he go in the line?" The woman's answer was a soft whisper, but the kind meant to be overheard. "Because, sweetie, some people pretend to be more than they are." Nathaniel inhaled once. The insult didn't burn, it settled. Familiar, predictable, expected. The hum of the terminal thickened as Turner returned with backup a supervisor in a navy vest, posture stiff, expression preloaded with skepticism. His name tag read R. Donovan. He approached with the gravity of someone convinced they were about to solve a problem rather than create a larger one. "Sir," Donovan began, arms folding as if bracing for conflict, "my agent tells me there's an issue with your boarding pass." "There's no issue," Nathaniel replied evenly. Donovan held out a hand. "Boarding pass. ID." His tone made it clear this wasn't a request. Nathaniel handed them over with controlled precision. Donovan examined each item with the exaggerated scrutiny of a man performing authority. He scanned the boarding pass, tapped at the tablet, frowned, scanned again. Beeps confirmed the same thing each time. First class. Verified. Cleared. Yet Donovan's expression tightened. "Strange," he muttered. "I need to verify the payment method used." A man behind Nathaniel laughed under his breath. "Here we go." Donovan glanced at Nathaniel, eyes narrowing. "Sir, what card did you use to pay for this ticket?" "Corporate," Nathaniel replied. "Which corporation?" Nathaniel looked at him steadily, letting the silence stretch just long enough to make Donovan's confidence flicker. "Mine," a few passengers chuckled. Not in amusement mockery. As if Head told an absurd joke. The supervisor's jaw ticked in annoyance. "Sir, we're trying to do our job. If you can't answer basic questions, I answered your question," Nathaniel said softly. Donovan exhaled sharply. "Well, need to verify with headquarters. Please step aside until we complete the check." He gestured toward a small holding area, an isolation space used for passengers flagged for suspicion. It felt deliberate. It felt targeted. It felt rehearsed. A woman in pearls whispered, "Oh my God. Is this a security thing?" Another leaned in. "I knew it. I told you he looked out of place." Turner crossed her arms triumphantly, as if the scene validated every assumption she'd made. Nathaniel didn't move toward the holding area. Instead, he lifted his gaze toward Donovan, the stillness around him gathering into something colder, sharper. "I won't be stepping anywhere," he said quietly. "Sir, this is standard procedure." "No," Nathaniel interrupted, tone still low. "This is selective procedure." A ripple cut through the crowd, tiny, unsure, but real. Donovan stiffened. "If you refuse to comply, we can escalate this." Nathaniel tilted his head slightly, a gesture so subtle it hardly qualified as movement. "You already have." The supervisor blinked, thrown off by the calmness. The lights overhead flickered once, a momentary pulse across the polished floor. Phones lifted a little higher, the beginning of something no one could name but everyone could feel. Nathaniel reached into his jacket, not abruptly, not hesitantly, but with the smooth certainty of a man who had no fear of being misunderstood. His fingers brushed the edge of his phone. Not yet the call, just the invitation. And for the first time since the confrontation began, the terminal felt nervous. The supervisor's radio crackled at his shoulder, a tiny burst of static that cut through the tension like a warning. Donovan ignored it. His focus stayed locked on Nathaniel, searching for something: guilt, fear, hesitation, anything that would justify the way Head escalated this. But Nathaniel stood still, posture calm, eyes steady, as if the entire terminal were a stage he hadn't agreed to step onto. Turner hovered behind her supervisor, arms crossed in a tight knot of self-satisfaction. "I told you something wasn't right," she muttered, loud enough for the nearest passengers to hear. A few nodded in agreement. Confirmation bias always traveled in packs. Nathaniel heard all of it. He let all of it pass through him like smoke. But the air around him wasn't the same. Not to him. Not anymore. Pieces of the past moved through his mind, not memories that made him angry, but memories that made him understand exactly why people like Turner and Donovan always made the same mistake. He had been underestimated his entire life. At 9 years old, he remembered sitting in a cramped waiting room while his mother defended him against a school administrator who had insisted he was too disruptive for the advanced math program. At 15, he watched a shopkeeper follow him down every aisle of a local store, waiting for a crime that never came. At 23, in his first pitch meeting, an investor had told him, "We don't bet big money on small beginnings." Even after he built Cole Aeronautics from a 2-person startup into a global aviation technology empire, after his patents reshaped the backbone of modern airline booking systems, after Forbes crowned him the ghost architect of travel, for building the very networks that kept international air. Roots alive, people still looked at him the same way Turner just had, like he didn't belong where he stood, like gravity itself had placed him in the wrong part of the terminal. Donovan cleared his throat. "Sir," him asking again, "step aside. We need to contact corporate support to verify this reservation." Nathaniel met his stare. "You won't reach them." The supervisor frowned. "Excuse me?" Nathaniel didn't answer. "Not yet." 2 rows down, a businessman rolled his eyes. Hez, making it worse for himself. Another replied, "Just move him already. We're all trying to board." Turner stepped forward again, her voice tightening. "Sir, this is the last time. If you refuse to cooperate, we'll have to call airport security." A hush swept the line. Security. The word always changed the temperature of a room. Nathaniel didn't blink. "I haven't refused anything," he said. "You're the ones refusing to accept the verification your own system already confirmed." Donovan bristled. "Are you implying my staff is lying?" "I'm implying your assumptions arrived before I did." A murmur rippled through the cluster of passengers, uneasy, but undeniable. Donovan stepped closer, lowering his voice as if proximity itself could force obedience. "Listen carefully, sir. I don't know what you think you're doing, but this is a federal facility. You don't get to dictate how we operate." Nathaniel tilted his head, expression unreadable. "That's ironic." "Excuse me?" Donovan snapped. "Because I'm the one who built your operating system." The supervisor froze. Turner's smug smile faltered. The passengers glanced between each other in confusion, unsure if they'd heard him correctly. Nathaniel didn't elaborate. He didn't need to. Instead, he glanced down at his phone. The device vibrated once, one short, discreet pulse. A message flashed across the screen. "Back-end audit sync ready, awaiting your go." Somewhere hundreds of miles away, inside a secure server farm built entirely on his patents, An engineering team waited for his command. Not to destroy, not to punish, just to remind. Donovan's radio crackled again, this time more urgently. Control to Gate 4. We're seeing unusual delays across the booking servers. Do you copy? The supervisor stiffened. What kind of delays? The voice on the radio replied, tense. System-wide. Ticket validation failing. Seat assignments aren't loading. We think the core is freezing. Passengers around them lifted their heads, hearing the panic in the static. Turner looked between the radio and Nathaniel, suddenly pale. Donovan tapped his device again, scanning another traveler's pass, and watched it fail. Not possible, he muttered. The system never goes down. Nathaniel finally raised his eyes from his phone. You're right, he said calmly. It doesn't. The implication hung there, heavy, inevitable, undeniable. And in that moment, the terminal understood one simple truth. The man they had doubted wasn't waiting for permission. He was the one who had always written it. The crackle of Donovan's radio hadn't even faded before another alert pinged across the terminal speakers, a soft chime meant for minor disruptions, but now it sounded like the first tremor before an earthquake. Attention staff. Please stand by. System diagnostics in progress. Passengers shifted uneasily. Diagnostics was never good news. Diagnostics during first-class boarding was a disaster. Donovan tried to hide the anxiety tightening his jaw. Probably just a temporary glitch, he muttered, tapping furiously at his tablet. But the device refused to cooperate. A spinning icon blinked mockingly on the screen. Come on. Load, he whispered through his teeth. Turner leaned in. Should I stall the line? You already have, Nathaniel said quietly. Turner jerked back as if his voice carried static. A woman 2 people behind him whispered, This is ridiculous. Did he break the machine? Her husband shook his head. No. Something bigger is happening. Bigger was an understatement. On the second floor, a row of airline managers converged like a nervous flock. Their earpieces buzzed with fragmented updates, servers timing out, duplicate bookings appearing across flights, first-class manifests disappearing mid-refresh. The system was failing in ways it had never failed before, and at the center of it all, standing in a single pool of terminal light, was the man they had tried so hard to push aside. Nathaniel watched the ripple of confusion spread through the staff, the whispers, the tightening of shoulders, the dawning realization that the world was not functioning the way it had 5 minutes ago. He didn't smile. But something shifted behind his eyes, a quiet acknowledgement of inevitability. Turner crossed her arms again, trying to recover the authority slipping from her grasp. Sir, even if there is an outage, you still need to cooperate until we confirm. Until you confirm what you've already confirmed? Nathaniel asked. 3 times. Her mouth opened, but no sound emerged. He continued, voice level. I've answered every request. I've handed you every document. The only thing you're verifying right now is your bias. The crowd stiffened. Even those who had been smirking fell silent. Donovan took a half-step forward, anger rising to fill the space embarrassment left behind. You're out of line? No, Nathaniel replied. I'm exactly in line. You're the one who moved the goalposts. A murmur slipped through the watching passengers, soft, but supportive. Donovan's jaw hardened. Do you understand that obstructing airline staff is a federal offense? And do you understand, Nathaniel answered, that discrimination is too? The supervisor flushed, and for a moment, the terminal felt like it had cracked right down the middle between the world Donovan thought he controlled and the world he was just beginning to recognize. Another chime rang overhead, this one louder. A voice followed, clipped and strained. All agents, halt check-in operations until further notice. Technical teams are investigating a system freeze across all domestic and international routes. Gasps rippled through the line. A businessman cursed under his breath. A pilot walking by slowed, eyes widening. Turner spun toward her screen again, as if hoping reality might undo itself. It's shutting down, she whispered. It's shutting everything down. Donovan's radio erupted a 3rd time. Gate 12 reporting boarding passes errant scanning. Gate 18, no passenger data loading. HQ says it's spreading through our entire network. Root cause unknown, might be catastrophic. The supervisor stared at his tablet, which had gone fully black. He turned toward Nathaniel slowly. Something in his expression had changed, a fracture. The first crack in the mask of certainty he wore like a uniform. "What did you do?" he asked, voice thin. Nathaniel didn't answer immediately. He let the question hang there, suspended between accusation and fear. Then he held up his phone, not threateningly, not triumphantly, simply, factually. A single notification glowed at the top of the screen. System freeze. Execution in progress status. Locked. Manual override. Only. Turner covered her mouth. Someone behind Nathaniel whispered, "No way!" Another breathed, "Hess," connected to this. But Nathaniel wasn't looking at any of them. His eyes stayed on Donovan. "When you questioned my presence here," he said softly, "you should have questioned the system you rely on more." The supervisor swallowed. "Who are you?" Nathaniel stepped forward, unhurried, unthreatening, but undeniably in control. "The man who built the backbone of your airline," he said, voice low. "And the man who just turned it off." Silence spread wide, heavy, absolute. Not a single passenger moved. Not a single agent breathed too loudly. Even the terminal lights seemed to still themselves, as if honoring the shift in power. The humiliation was over. The reckoning had begun. The moment the words left his mouth, the terminal changed. Not in noise, not in movement, but in atmosphere. A collective realization rippled outward, slow at first, then crashing like a silent wave across the entire first-class wing. People who had laughed minutes earlier now stared as if seeing Nathaniel for the first time. A manager from upstairs hurried down the escalator, tapping frantically at his earpiece. "We're losing live data feeds," he muttered to another supervisor. "Seat maps, passenger lists, everything. Even the fallback server is locked out. Locked out. A phrase that meant one thing. Someone with higher authority had taken control. Donovan stood rigid, eyes darting between his dead tablet and the phone still glowing in Nathaniel's hand. "This isn't possible," he whispered, voice trembling beneath the weight of what he didn't yet understand. "The system has multiple redundancies. Nobody can shut down all layers at once." "Nobody?" Nathaniel asked quietly. He didn't smirk. He didn't need to. A sharp beep echoed through the room, an alarm from the primary console at the check-in counter. Red text flashed across Turner's screen. "Unauthorized override. Master protocol active." Turner staggered back. I've never seen this before." Another alert followed. "Critical priority. CEO authentication required to restore services." Passengers exchanged glances. "CEO? Of what? Of who?" Eyes drifted back to the man standing perfectly still in the center of the disruption he hadn't created, but had chosen, finally, to answer. Nathaniel slid his phone back into his pocket with the same quiet precision head used all morning. "You asked me who I was," he said softly. "You're about to find out." The manager who had rushed down the escalator stepped forward, voice cautious. "Sir, do you work for the airline?" "I don't work for it," Nathaniel replied. "I built what it works on." Confusion washed over the manager's face. Turner looked like she might faint, and Donovan, stubborn, pride cracking under pressure, clung to the last thread he had left. "You expect us to believe that?" he snapped. "You expect me to believe you can shut down an entire international network from a phone?" Nathaniel's gaze didn't waver. "I didn't shut down your network," he said. "I shut down mine." The distinction struck like lightning. A passenger whispered, "Oh my God." Another murmured, "He owns the system. He owns the whole thing." And then the most telling reaction of all, the pilot who had paused earlier, finally spoke. "I've heard about this," he said, stepping closer. "Our airline licenses its booking and routing infrastructure from one of the biggest aviation tech firms in the country, Cole Aeronautics." He paused. Then slowly, "You're Nathaniel Cole." A stillness fell so heavy it vibrated in the bones. Turner shook her head in disbelief, eyes wide. No, that can't be." "Nathaniel Cole is a ghost?" Nathaniel finished for her. "Someone you never see? Someone who doesn't need to prove anything to anyone?" The pilot nodded, his voice steady. "He owns the backbone of half the airlines in this hemisphere." Donovan's face drained of color. Before he could respond, another chime sounded, this one from the loudspeakers overhead. "All staff. Be advised. Cole Aeronautics has initiated a manual systems lockdown. Remain stationary until further instruction. Executive-level override in effect. The message confirmed everything. The terminal froze. Passengers who had mocked him now shrank back, eyes dropping to the floor. Murmurs died. Recording phones lowered. The spectacle had ended not because the audience lost interest, but because the stage lights had shifted. Power was no longer abstract. It was standing in front of them. Nathaniel stepped forward, closing the small distance between himself and Donovan. "This didn't need to happen," he said quietly. "All you had to do was treat me like any other passenger, but instead, you judged me before you saw me. You dismissed me before you checked me. You questioned me after your system confirmed me." Donovan swallowed hard, chest rising in unsteady breaths. "And what you've created now," Nathaniel continued, "is not a delay." He paused. "Let the silence deepen. It's a lesson." The supervisor's voice cracked. What happens next?" Nathaniel glanced toward the mezzanine level, where a cluster of executives had appeared, faces pale, postures tight, as they realized who they were now dealing with. He lifted his phone again. One tap. A command resumed its shimmer across the screen. "Proceed with system freeze." Nathaniel's thumb hovered over the confirmation. "The next 5 minutes," he said softly, "are going to determine how much you learn." And the terminal held its breath. The air in the terminal sharpened thin, electric like the second before lightning touches ground. Every person in the first-class wing sensed it. Some shifted their weight. Some clasped their bags a little tighter. Others simply stared at Nathaniel as though waiting for a verdict. Upstairs, 3 executives hurried down the escalator, their ID badges swinging nervously. They approached with tentative caution, like people inching toward a powerful machine they did not know how to operate. The tallest of them, Harris, operations director, forced a stiff smile. "Mr. Cole, sir, we didn't realize you were traveling with us today." His voice cracked midway through the sentence. Nathaniel's eyes moved to him, calm but unreadable. "I tried to." Turner flinched at the implication. Donovan lowered his head for the first time since the confrontation began. Harris stepped closer, palms open in a placating gesture. "There must be some misunderstanding. Our system flagged a discrepancy, and our agents acted according to procedure." Nathaniel's gaze drifted to Turner, whose face tightened with dread. "Your procedure," he said softly, "isn't the problem. The people enforcing it are." Turner's breath hitched. I didn't mean." But her voice collapsed under the weight of every assumption Shed made in the last 5 minutes. A second executive, a woman named Patel, spoke quickly. "Mr. Cole, if you would allow us, we can escort you to a private lounge while we fix the system issue." Nathaniel didn't move. "Is that what you think this is? A customer service problem?" She swallowed. I apologize if that sounded reductive. We simply want to make things right." "Right," Nathaniel repeated quietly. "Would have been treating me like everyone else at the start." A ripple moved through the passengers. Guilt, discomfort, regret. Even those who hadn't spoken a single word felt exposed. One of them whispered, "We really misjudged him." Another replied, "We just assumed." Assumed. Always assumed. Nathaniel turned his attention back to Harris. "I built the architecture that runs your airline," he said. "If I wanted, I could rewrite your entire operational protocol from this phone. So let me make something very clear." He lowered the device, but the weight of it remained in the air. "I didn't freeze your system because I was insulted. I froze it because your staff acted with confidence, not competence. Bias disguised as procedure. Arrogance disguised as protocol. That's a security risk much bigger than anything you think you saw here today." Harris' jaw tightened as the truth settled in. He nodded slowly, unwilling but unable to deny it. "We understand," he said. "We do now." Nathaniel studied him for a moment, then looked at Donovan. The supervisor straightened instinctively, bracing for impact. "You questioned my ID," Nathaniel began. Donovan swallowed. "Yes, sir. You questioned my boarding pass." "Yes. You questioned my right to stand in a line I paid for." 3 times, even after your system confirmed my ticket." Donovan's throat bobbed. "Yes, sir. You escalated without cause, and used procedure as justification. The supervisor's eyes glistened not with tears but with humiliation so deep it burned. I apologize, Mr. Cole. I truly do. Nathaniel didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Your apology, he said, isn't enough. Behind him, a gate agent stifled a gasp. Turner looked ready to collapse. Patel stepped in again, trying to salvage the moment. Mr. Cole, if you would consider, Nathaniel interrupted. How much of the next few minutes you're ready to own? He lifted his phone again. The screen glowed. System freeze. Active. Restore services? Yes. No. Every pair of eyes locked onto the device. Harris' voice trembled. Mr. Cole, please. If our operations stay frozen much longer, we'll have to ground every flight for the next 5 hours. We'll be dealing with global delays. That's what happens, Nathaniel said softly, when the foundation is flawed. Turner let out a tiny sob. Nathaniel looked at her, not with cruelty, but with the cold clarity of consequence. You judged me before you scanned me, before you listened, before you looked, and now all of you understand something my grandmother taught me long before I could afford a ticket like this. He paused. Power doesn't have to shout. It just has to act. The screen on his phone timed out, waiting for his touch. Harris stepped forward, voice shaking. What can we do to make this right? Nathaniel looked around at the agents who had watched, at the passengers who had whispered, at the supervisors who had doubled down instead of stepping in. Then he answered, learn. The word fell heavy, final. But learning wasn't painless, and Nathaniel wasn't done teaching. The executives stood frozen in a half-circle around him, as if any sudden movement might shatter whatever fragile balance remained in the room. Passengers who minutes ago had felt bold enough to whisper, judge, assume now held their breath. No one wanted to be seen. No one wanted to be remembered, not for this moment. Nathaniel didn't relish their discomfort. He didn't need to. He simply let the truth sit in the space they had created, a truth they had earned. Harris tried again, his voice thinner this time. Mr. Cole, please, if we could just reset the system, we can start repairing the situation. Resetting the system, Nathaniel said calmly, doesn't reset behavior. Silence echoed through the terminal. The kind that forces reflection, the kind that forces honesty. Turner's hands trembled at her sides, her voice cracked. I truly didn't mean to disrespect you, sir. I was just following protocol. Nobody follows protocol by assuming the worst of a single passenger, Nathaniel replied. You followed prejudice, not procedure. She flinched like the words were physical. Donovan looked ready to be sick. Mr. Cole, I've been with this airline for 15 years. I swear I've never, Nathaniel held up a hand. I'm not interested in your resume. I'm interested in the decisions you made today. The pilot, still lingering nearby, spoke softly to a colleague. This was a leadership failure, not a tech failure. Harris exhaled shakily, nodding. We take full responsibility. No, Nathaniel corrected. You take partial responsibility. The rest? That belongs to the culture you let operate under your name. The executives exchanged glances, fearful, ashamed, uncertain. Nathaniel looked past them, beyond the cluster of staff and passengers, toward the massive LED display board on the mezzanine. Flight numbers flickered from green to yellow, from yellow to orange, potential delays spreading like a contagion. He had created this pressure intentionally, not out of anger, but clarity. Change doesn't happen in comfort. People don't listen when they feel safe. They only listen when silence has weight. Nathaniel's phone vibrated lightly in his hand. Another message from his team appeared. System integrity stable. Freeze still effective. No bypass detected. Awaiting final instruction. His engineers never needed context. They saw the command. They executed. They trusted. It was time the airline learned to do the same. Harris' voice barely rose above a whisper. Mr. Cole, we're prepared to issue a full apology, publicly if necessary, and initiate mandatory anti-bias retraining for all staff. Review hiring criteria, performance metrics, whatever it takes. That's a start, Nathaniel said. Turner stepped closer, even though fear colored every step. If you let the system come back, I'll accept any consequence. Suspension, Termination, whatever you decide. Nathaniel looked at her for a long moment. It wasn't pity or vindication. It was understanding. You don't answer to me, he said. You answer to the standards of the job you chose. Her eyes glistened. A businessman nearby swallowed audibly. Sir, if I may, Nathaniel turned slightly. The man continued, voice trembling with the weight of guilt. I was one of the first people to assume you were in the wrong line. I shouldn't have. I'm sorry. His wife added softly, we all saw what we expected, not what was in front of us. That was the closest thing to a confession the room would ever hear. Nathaniel nodded once. Not in forgiveness. In acknowledgement, bias is cheap, he said. Correction is costly. He stepped past Donovan and Turner, closer to the large windows overlooking the tarmac. A jet drifted lazily across the runway, its engines humming with the quiet confidence of machines built correctly. Tell me something, Nathaniel said, turning back toward the executives. Do you know why your airline licenses my system? Harris blinked. Because it's the most reliable infrastructure in the industry. Nathaniel nodded. And because I don't build systems that fail people, I build systems that protect them. He held up his phone. Today wasn't about inconvenience. It was about integrity. Patel exhaled shakily. What would you like us to do? Nathaniel tapped the screen lightly just once. The display lit up. Restoration sequence prepared. Final authorization required. The crowd watched the tiny blinking cursor as if it were a pulse. Not yet. Nathaniel lowered the phone. Before anything comes back online, he said, one thing needs to be made clear. Dozens of eyes locked onto him. Dignity is not optional, he continued. Not in your airline, not in your staff, not in your culture. And certainly not in the way you treat your passengers. No one dared interrupt. When your system recognizes someone, he said, your people should too. Harris nodded, slow, humbled. We understand. For your sake, Nathaniel replied quietly, I hope you do. A beat of silence followed, then two, then three, and the entire terminal waited, breath held, shoulders stiff for the moment when power would decide whether the world would move again. For a long moment, the only sound in the terminal was the distant hum of aircraft engines drifting through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Everything else, check-in counters, rolling suitcases, whispered conversations had fallen perfectly still. The world seemed suspended, orbiting around one man and one glowing phone screen. Nathaniel turned slightly, looking at the clusters of passengers who had watched the humiliation unfold, some eagerly, some indifferently, few bravely. But now, every eye carried the same emotion: accountability. Behind him, the executives stood rigid, waiting to be judged by the man they had failed to recognize. Up until 10 minutes ago, they were the highest authority in this part of the airport. Now they looked like junior interns waiting outside a closed-door review. Nathaniel lifted his phone again. The blue glow cast a faint light beneath his jawline, painting his features with an eerie calm. Restoration sequence, ready tap to authorize. Donovan swallowed hard. Mr. Cole, if we don't restore soon, flights will start canceling. The ripple effect. A ripple only forms, Nathaniel said, when something disturbs the surface. Patel clasped her hands, bowing her head slightly. We accept that we caused this disturbance, and we accept the consequences. Nathaniel studied her, not the desperation, but the honesty trying to surface. Consequences, he repeated quietly. Good. Let's talk about those. Donovan stiffened. Turner's breath caught. Harris moved one step forward. Well, follow whatever accountability process you deem fit. For the staff, and for us. Not just for the staff, Nathaniel corrected. For the system? Turner blinked. The system? Yes, Nathaniel said. The one that never questions certain passengers. The one that never requests ID from people who look the part. The one that assumes entitlement has a face. The words pressed down with the weight of truth. It is not enough to fix the servers, he continued. You must fix the people who use them. A murmur washed across the terminal agreement. Discomfort, realization. Nathaniel's gaze swept the room, steady as steel. This airline will implement mandatory bias reviews for every frontline employee. Retraining, new protocols, transparent accountability. If you want to continue licensing my infrastructure, you will rebuild your human infrastructure. Harris nodded slow, defeated. It will be done. And, Nathaniel added, I want something else. Something permanent. Turner shut her eyes as if bracing for a verdict. A new directive, he said. A policy every agent must follow. No passenger is to be challenged with suspicion unless the system gives a reason. Not their face. Not their clothes. Not your assumptions. Two passengers exchanged glances, shame creeping across their expressions. Patel nodded quickly. Well, enacted immediately. Good, Nathaniel said, because today proved your staff doesn't need new software. They need new standards. He stepped toward the check-in counter where Turner had first stopped him. His posture wasn't vindictive. It was purposeful. You judged me before you scanned me, he said to her. Your job is not to decide who belongs. It's to confirm who does. Turner's voice barely rose above a whisper. I understand, sir. Do you? He asked softly. She forced herself to meet his eyes. Yes, I do. For the first time all day, Nathaniel believed her. He turned to the executives. One more thing. Harris nearly flinched. Anything. Nathaniel gestured toward the crowd. A public apology. Right here, right now. Not to me. His expression, calm but razor-sharp, swept across the passengers. To every person who watched you treat me differently because you assumed I shouldn't be here. The terminal stiffened. Shame pressed into Donovan's shoulders like a physical weight. Turner's eyes filled with tears she didn't try to hide. Patel closed her eyes briefly, then nodded. Without waiting, Harris stepped forward and raised his voice for the entire wing to hear. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, hands trembling slightly, we owe you an apology. Today, one of our valued passengers was treated with prejudice. Our staff acted on assumptions, not facts. This is unacceptable. It violates our values, our training, and our duty. Passengers stared, absorbing every word. We are implementing immediate corrective measures, Harris continued, and we will ensure this never occurs again toward any passenger. The apology hung in the air, raw, necessary, overdue. Nathaniel finally inhaled, slow and deliberate. Then he tapped his phone. A soft chime echoed. Restoration sequence initiated systems rebooting. Across the mezzanine, flight boards flickered back to green. Check-in screens glowed alive. Agents gasped with relief. Passengers let out held breath as if released from an invisible grip. But even as operations stirred back to life, the room remained quiet, humbled. Because everyone understood, Nathaniel didn't just reboot a network, he reset the balance, and he wasn't finished yet. It took several long minutes for the full hum of the airport to return, screens refreshing, printers spitting out fresh boarding passes, intercoms clearing their throats before announcing updates with renewed confidence. Yet, even with the machinery of travel grinding back to life, the first-class wing remained unusually still. Because the real disruption hadn't been technological, it had been human. Nathaniel lowered his phone, the glow fading from his hand like the aftermath of a storm. He didn't look triumphant. He didn't need to. Power had already spoken, quiet, precise, devastating in its clarity. The executives, still gathered before him, waited for some final directive, unsure whether they were dismissed or damned. Turner and Donovan remained slightly behind them, their postures stiff with shame, their eyes locked on the floor. Nathaniel looked past all of them, toward the tarmac where a jet gleamed beneath the morning sun, a reminder of what mattered. Movement, direction, forward momentum. Finally, he spoke. You can bring my bag now. The simplest sentence Head said all day, yet it landed with the weight of a verdict. Turner jolted, scrambling to the back counter to retrieve the leather carry-on shed ignored earlier. She returned with both hands clasped around the handle, as if presenting it to royalty. Thank you, Nathaniel said. 2 words, measured, controlled. A mercy she did not deserve but would remember. Harris stepped forward. Mr. Cole, would you like a personal escort to your gate? Or perhaps our VIP security detail? No, Nathaniel interrupted gently. I can walk myself. The implication settled sharply. I never needed your permission to stand where I stand, and I don't need your escort to move forward. Nathaniel turned away from them, but before taking a step, he glanced back not at the staff, but at the passengers who had watched everything from a safe distance. Dozens of eyes dropped instantly, but not quickly enough. "You all saw what happened today," he said, "and you'll see it again, at airports, at hotels, in boardrooms, in restaurants, in places where assumptions walk faster than truth." Several faces flushed with the sting of recognition. "Next time," he continued, "watch differently." A woman near the front bit her lip. A man stepped slightly back, as if the words had pushed him. A teenager with earbuds lowered his gaze for the first time since recording. Nathaniel nodded once toward them, then toward the staff. "Dignity doesn't need an audience," he said, "but injustice always seems to find one." And with that, he walked toward the premium checkpoint. The crowd parted instinctively like a curtain opening for a scene no one expected but everyone understood. Some stepped aside respectfully, others out of fear, and some simply out of the sudden awareness of how small their earlier judgments had been. As Nathaniel approached the secure screening area, the TSA officer there stiffened in recognition. Head watched everything, silently, from just beyond the boundary. He straightened his posture. "Sir, welcome to first class." Nathaniel nodded, offering a brief but genuine thanks. Not because the man recognized him, but because he recognized the moment. He placed his items on the conveyor belt, stepped through the scanner, and retrieved them with quiet composure. His movements were precise, unhurried, a man re-entering calm after navigating chaos. As he reached the private escalator leading up to the first-class lounge, footsteps echoed behind him. Donovan. Breath unsteady, voice hoarse. "Mr. Cole?" Nathaniel paused, turning slightly. The supervisor stopped a few feet away, hands trembling in a way that had nothing to do with fear of losing his job and everything to do with understanding why he deserved to. Donovan swallowed, choosing truth over pride. "I want to say this won't happen again. I promise you. To anyone." Nathaniel studied him, reading sincerity beyond the panic. "It's not your promise I want," he said. "It's your practice." Donovan nodded, eyes damp. "Yes, sir." "And one more thing," Nathaniel added. "Next time you feel the urge to question someone, ask yourself why." The supervisor blinked, holding the lesson close, like a truth he should have learned years ago. Without another word, Nathaniel stepped onto the escalator. The smooth ascent lifted him toward the upper level, the lounge glowing in warm gold light above. The further he rose, the quieter the world became. The chaos below shrank into a distant hum, a reminder of a moment that would be written into the airline's training manuals and whispered about for years. As he approached the lounge doors, an attendant in a crisp navy uniform greeted him with a respectful bow of the head. "Welcome, Mr. Cole," she said softly. "We've been expecting you." He offered the faintest smile, one reserved for moments when justice didn't shout but settled. Inside, the lounge was quiet, serene. The kind of quiet that wasn't earned through authority, but through understanding. Nathaniel claimed a window seat overlooking the runway just as a plane began its slow, deliberate rise into the sky. He watched it lift, engine steady, wings slicing the blue. Stability, ascension, control. Exactly the world had rebuilt below. He took a slow breath. Not victory. Balance. On the coffee table beside him, a glossy airline brochure lay open to a corporate slogan, "We rise by elevating others." Nathaniel tapped the edge of the page once. "Maybe now," he murmured. "You finally will." And somewhere beneath his feet, in a terminal still buzzing with the echo of consequence, dozens of people, agents, supervisors, passengers carried a lesson with them they would never again leave at the gate.